Hi guys, and welcome to Primetime Mitch, and today is a very happy day for the channel because I am joined by the extremely talented and much appreciated composer and sound designer Mr. JOHN MASSARI. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, you're certainly looking very upbeat and well today, and I'm looking forward to asking you a few questions that are hopefully what a lot of people would like to hear as well.
Okay, so, absolutely. I shall endeavor to fulfill that need.
Well, I mean, I'm going to sort of go a bit left field, but sort of we'll go back quite early because I have done some, done an interview before with 𝗕𝗿𝗵𝗹𝗍𝗂. I was talking to him about composing music, and I had a question I really wanted to sort of put to any other composer I spoke to. When you're like growing up from a very young age, I'm always curious as to how the sound side of things, the musical side of things grips you. Can you remember the first piece of music you actually created?
Well, that I created, oh my goodness. I want to say the first thing that comes to mind is I was fascinated with the soundtrack to the movie score for the movie Shaft, which was composed by 𝗍𝗂𝐿. And it was recorded in Memphis, Tennessee, if not, I'm not mistaken. And there was a piece of music on there. It was basically what's called source music. So if you're in a public place and you're hearing music in the background, so the main character at one point was in a cafe and there was music playing behind him. And when I listened to the soundtrack, I go, I like that piece of music. I'm going to do something like that. Take it to the band at school and orchestrate it for 5 trumpets because we had a pretty good trumpet section. And so I wrote this piece for 5 trumpets and I played piano. And I don't even know if I recorded it, but it was the biggest thrill in the world because I planned it out. I can kind of hear it in my head. I made sure all the parts were copied correctly, that when the kids can read it, it won't be difficult. They won't say, is that a B flat or a B natural, you know? So I had all these things, and when it played, it was just the biggest thrill in the world.
So it's the rush you got from that.
Yeah,
sort of carried you
I got to hear it back, hear the vibration of the air coming back to my ears, because it was only in my head to sort of finally feel it. And I play. It was just for the 5 trumpets and me playing piano, you know. And so that was my first experience, something that I wrote from start to finish. And I should have recorded it, but you know,
it's in there. It's in your memory. That's always.
It's in my memory. Yeah, it was very. But before we go on, I had a quick question. What by chance part of the world do you reside?
I live just outside of Manchester.
No kidding. Okay, I got to say a shout out to my good pal Els Knight. I've just given him a nickname right now. He came up with it. It's called the Manchester Shredder. He plays guitar, skates. I've known him since he was a wee young man, and he sent me videos, and we've been keeping in touch. I did a concert out here in Los Angeles with the Hollywood Chamber Orchestra and the Dickies, the punk band, the Dickies. And we performed the score live to film for Killer Klowns from Outer Space. So since that time, he had been, you know, he was into animation, all sorts of things. We used to FaceTime, and now he's a grown-up guy, and he's actually played guitar on some tracks for me. Wow. And he's very awesome. He's got great melodic sensibilities, and he's very serious about what he's doing, and he's in a variety of bands. And so a big shout out to Els. There you go. We can move on.
I like.
We can go back to the show now.
He's from a great part of the world, so I'm glad you did that.
Absolutely. I can't wait one day to visit Manchester.
You'd be very welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So you mentioned about what sort of inspired you and the way you crafted your first piece of music. I get the feeling when I've listened to some of your stuff that you have like sort of a real passion for the orchestral sound. I was going to ask you what sort of old film scores you admired the most? Because I mean, I love the scores of the 40s and the 50s and things like that. So I'm just imagining you're the same.
Right. Well, I have to say my tastes run to the obscure. There was a film I saw. It was out in the theater for a very short amount of time. It basically bombed. And I believe the movie, I want to say the movie was called Shangri-La, or it was based on the original classic 40s film called Shangri-La. And it had a score by Burt Bacharach. And what I would do is I would listen to the soundtrack before I went to see the movie. And I didn't care if the movie was a bomb or didn't really make any sense, because it was kind of interesting. It was about a group of people that ventured up into the Himalayas to see this mythic community of people that were very healthy and very optimistic. And it was like, it was very paradise location in the world. You know, it was the minute you went there, you felt good and the people were wonderful. And all of a sudden there was this music that really didn't match. You know, you would think it was it would be very ethereal and what have you. And there were just like a string of pop songs. And that kind of left an impression on me. There was also, when I was a kid, my very first foray was at a triple feature matinee. I think I was 6 years old. And it was during a very trying time here in the States, because there was something called the Cuban Missile Crisis. So all the parents were going crazy preparing for World War III, and the kids were all running through the streets wild because it was Halloween. And we had no one to watch us, so we were doing anything we want. So we would go down to the movie theater all the time and see triple features. I had seen a triple feature of Mysterious Island, The Time Machine, and Forbidden Planet. And then there was another time that they had Journey to the Center of the Earth. So these were all fantastic, you know, fantastic imagery, and the music, you know, matched with it and left a big impression on me. And since I was a little kid, music has always fascinated me. I mean, I never got a guitar. I mean, I play bass guitar now, but I never got a guitar when I was a kid, because we had a piano. And I used to take a ruler and string rubber bands across it and pretend I was playing guitar. And you could not get me away from the radio. I was always playing the family's hi-fi setup. It was like a piece of furniture, you know, and I would turn it on at 3 o'clock in the morning to listen to music, and it would completely freak out my parents. So they finally got me a little AM radio that I would just like stare at for hours, listening to all the music to it. And it was just, music has always given me an experience. So every time I was listening to music, I was getting experience. I was taking all that in. And later on, I didn't even realize that it was an occupation to be a film composer, you know, like where you get a job making music for television shows and things like that. And when I realized that, I realized, well, I want to continue that and go in that direction. And so all my life, I'd been in music programs and played in bands and of all sorts of music, played trumpet and French horn and the contrabass. And I had a band that I played keyboards in plus bass. And so that's what led me into a series. I just couldn't stop. Even to this day, I can't stop it. I'm always tinkering, making new music.
When you went into university to further your learning, what were you playing predominantly at that point?
Well, you had to play the piano. If you were going to be a music major, you had to play the piano and some other instrument. And so with me, it was trumpet.
Okay.
And at the time, I went to the University of California at Los Angeles, called UCLA. It was a very large institution. And it was this Schoenberg School of Music. And I used to practice in the practice rooms all the time. And every once in a while, we were just blown away. We'd hear this one trumpet player that would just completely floor us. And it was a guy, someone who was older than us by at least 10 years. And because we were in at least 10 or 12 years. I think he was like 30 and we were 18. So he was like a grown-up.
Yeah.
and his name was Jerry Hay, and he played a lot for Quincy Jones. He did arrangements and played on some of the Earth, Wind and Fire's famous albums. He played for producer Quincy Jones in a slew of things, including Michael Jackson albums. And so we were just like completely in awe of him. And so it was at that point I realized, you know, when we'd hang out with him and talk with him, he'd talk to us kids for a few minutes. And when you saw him play, he gave a little quick demonstrations, and we were just mesmerized over the fact that it was just, he's not a person playing a trumpet. It's the trumpet and him are one, you know. And I've had the honor of coming across musicians all my life that, like, I've had a cellist come to my house to do a solo and record them. And when you're that close to a fine musician, that their life is like dedicated to this musician, and they express themselves through this collection of strings and wood or brass or whatever it's made of, and you realize it's just a special gift, you know. So at that point, I decided I was going to give up the trumpet. I'd rather write music for the trumpet than try to play as good as him, you know, because he was born. It was like he was born with it, you know.
So you can still contribute to the sound, just not directly.
Just not play. I go, well, you know, I don't need to play trumpet. I'm fine. I have other ways of expressing myself, and that's through the music, creating the music itself.
I did wonder, because obviously I'm not a composer, I wouldn't know, but I like to learn about how you think. And I wondered, when it comes to like the piano, for example, I always thought that seemed to be the ultimate instrument to tell a story on, but is it more universal than that?
Well, I create music all sorts of ways. The last thing I will do, and I tell this to people that want to study music, if I'm composing music, and I've learned this from other composers, the last thing I'm going to do is sit down at the piano and stare at an empty manuscript paper. The last thing in the world I'm going to do, unless I have an idea to bring to the piano to notate my ideas on the piano. I usually, you know, conceptualize a lot in my brain. I tell my family, and there are places that I've been, facilities that I've worked at for stretches of time, where I felt that I needed a t-shirt that said, you know, if I'm in the kitchen making coffee, doesn't mean I want to talk. So I could be walking around, I could be driving in the car, and my mind is like background processing of what I'm looking for. And maybe something will give me an impression that I will take with me, and then sit at the piano and start tinkering. And all of a sudden, sometimes just a few notes, just a little chord sequence or a little motif, just kick it all off. It's fascinating. And that's like one of the thrills I get. It's like an actual adrenaline rush when something like that happens.
I can somewhat relate to the walking around with it in your head in a way, because I used to edit together video packages for my local wrestling promotion. And when they had a match, I did the video to how have we got to this, the history behind this match. And I would put a song in my head that I felt like it could be an orchestral piece or something that was really dramatic, you know, and I would put it on in my head, and then I would put the images over the top of the song in my head.
Right.
So, and I sort of understand what you mean about just being lost, because I would do that at work while I was on my own working in the warehouse. And so I kind of understand that in a way. But I was going to actually ask, I mean, I may as well ask now, I've just mentioned the wrestling. There was the composer for WWE for years was Jim Johnson, and he would compose themes that suited and were tailored to a character. And that brings me on to sort of, before I talk about the actual work you've done, how much research do you have to do before you've even played a note?
Oh, that's interesting that you asked that question, because often I almost never want to read a script, because I feel like I'm going to visualize the whole movie a particular way. Then when I see the movie, it's going to be a shock. I'm always hoping that it's better than my imagination. And the biggest disappointment with that is that often there'll be a script and I'll see the movie and I'll go, well, I'll pick up the script. I'll go, what happened to page like 23 through 42? What happened? That was really good. Oh, we didn't have enough time to shoot that. I go, that's where the whole movie is. That I fell in love with that part, and it's not in the movie. It's just, so the movie's not like meaning anything to it. I mean, I've worked on a lot of movies. And I've had some great triumphs and great disappointments. But usually what happens is that when I see a movie, I get to see the movie, then I don't rush to the piano. I think about all the characters. I think about all the situations. And then little by little, I'll develop music. Let's take Killer Klowns from Outer Space, for instance. I knew nothing about the film other than the title. And I understand the band, the Dickies at the time, they had never seen the movie. As a matter of fact, I think they wrote the song before it was even shot. And they were just given a piece of paper describing what the movie's about. And they came up with, and Leonard Phillips came up with those incredible lyrics with all the metaphors in them, and the music, the arrangement, everything was just like locking on, hitting hammers and nails. So when I walked into the movie theater for the screening, for the audition, by the way, I still had to audition. I listened to that song and I go, oh, this is going to be a fun movie. I thought it was going to be this bizarre black comedy science fiction thing, but it was a lot of fun. So later on, when I got into the movie, it was that there's an opening scene in a forest. You'll see the circus tent, which is the spaceship. I immediately fell in love. I said, I know where these guys are coming from. I know where the filmmakers, the Chiodo brothers, I know where they're coming from. So then I went home and I just couldn't stop tinkering at my piano and my synthesizers and just tinkering and like come up with something that's worthy idea. I would write it down or record it with a little cassette recorder and what have you. And then after several days, I worked up a scene for that I thought was very crucial, that if you saw this one scene, you can get what the whole movie's about. So it's the scene where they first venture into the spaceship and they get chased out, and then the clowns march on the town. And so I came up with all that music. And by the way, the theme, the motif where the clowns march on the town was a piece of music I'd written when I was like 16 or 17.
Wow.
For my band, Crisis. We were like a hard rock band before they called it metal. And they said, that sounds way too jazzy. There's no way we're going to play that song. So anyway, so that's how that worked. So it's basically understanding the film and the characters in that particular movie. Like you were saying about the composer writing characters for the different wrestlers. In that movie, it was not so much the theme for each person, but the as a whole, because there are three main characters are like a team, and then there's all the different situations, vignettes that the killer clowns appear in that became important, that helped draw everything together.
They all move the same as well. I guess you sort of got to think about that, because I was doing a video the other week with a lad on Instagram called 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏 is his page. He loves Killer Klowns, and he was actually saying he'd love to meet you one day. But he did.
𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏. I gotta write that down.
Yeah, please do. He'd be very happy. But he did say that the music and that scene, where the movements of the clowns are shuffling like they were legitimate clowns, fits so well with that score. So that's
thank you. That was one of the it's one of the films that the directors, the Chiodo brothers, they're all the filmmakers that made the movie. Basically, the director Steve Chiodo and all of his brothers, they told me exactly what films they absolutely do not like. It says, we don't want this to sound like any of the others, and they named off all the other films that were released around that time. We don't want our movie score to sound anything like it. We can't stand it. We can't stand it. The kind of movies we like, and they told me it was Ray Harryhausen movies, like The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, They love the way the music worked in the original Mighty Joe
Oh wow,
and
yeah.
King Kong, right? Those, because that's it. So if you can draw upon that, so we were already on the same page, and it was a real blast working with the Kyoto brothers, because they're very creative bunch of brothers.
Yeah, well, you can see that visually, can't you? That comes through. I mean, I'm going to go back to Killer Klowns in a minute, obviously. What I will say is, when I was doing a little bit of research on yourself, I found out about the Ray Bradbury Theatre. I was only first introduced to Ray Bradbury with Fahrenheit 451 and those sort of things. But what I loved about that series is the fact that I'm a big fan of anthologies and things like that. I love Tales of the Unexpected in the UK, and there's Alfred Hitchcock Presents. There's a new one over here called Inside Number 9, which is phenomenal. But anything like that, I'm a big fan of. And I was just really pleased to know that you were behind the theme of that. How do you go about constructing that?
Well, that's very interesting you say that, because early on at UCLA, Ray Bradbury used to show up to the dormitories if we were showing an interesting film. And I'm thinking, how in the world does he know that? And why would he come by? And he would do a talk. He would do like this motivational speech for a little bit to motivate us into being creative. And he would also read a poem or a poem that he wrote, or a chapter from one of his books. And I couldn't figure out why would this guy bother with us dumb kids, you know? And you got to understand, when we would show a movie on a Friday night at the dorms, we would have, from the AV department, we have to rent a projector and then string it up, and there'd be like one speaker that was actually part of the box that the projector came in, and that's what we were watching these movies over. They just projected on a wall, and there'd probably be 50 kids, but Ray Bradbury would be there, right? And I found out later that he wrote, I'm pretty sure he wrote Fahrenheit 451 at the legal library at UCLA, because he can rent a very expensive typewriter at the time that made everything look great, and it was like the 50s or 60s equivalent of a word processor, because there's things you could do on an IBM Selectrix typewriter that you can't do on your average everyday typewriter. So maybe he felt that he owed a lot to the school, and he didn't live that far away from the school, so he can either ride his bike or take the bus or what have you. So maybe he just kept in touch with, maybe he would get letters that would say, hey, at Hedrick Hall at UCLA, they're going to be showing Planet of the Apes. And so he would just show up. So I got to talk to him and chat with him a little bit as a student. Didn't think any of it. Then years later, I'd say like 3 or 4 years after I graduated, there was a producer that said, would you be interested to do a ghost story, an anthology of ghost stories? I go, that sounds fantastic. That'd be great. Okay. And they gave me a sheet of paper with a bunch of ideas on it. This was written by the person who wrote all the screenplays. And I read it over, and it described what the opening sequence was going to be like, how he wanted the music to come up at this point and down at that point. And he was mentioning films like Journey to the Center of the Earth and Bernard Herrmann and Elmer Bernstein. It's, you know, these big names. And so I did it, and they said, okay, I did a demonstration with some synthesizers and a couple of bassoons and violins and cellos. And they said the screenwriter really responded very extraordinarily well to this. He wants to meet you. And so I go to the office, and there's Ray Bradbury. So the whole time they didn't tell me it was Ray Bradbury, because everything was so hush hush. Because you got to figure, at the time he was like he was quite a big name in authors. He had those series. He had a big TV series based on his novels, the Martian Chronicles. So they keeping everything a secret because they don't want me to. And this is before social media. How are you gonna get the word out? You have to send everyone a postcard.
Yeah, of course.
You know, you go through a lot of trouble. You know, or you call up the trade papers. Like Variety or the Hollywood Reporter, and you spill the beans. I mean, anyway, so I met him in person, and I told him that you know, he had been such an inspiration to me that school that it helped me pursue my career. And he says, "Fantastic, kid. Now let's get to work."
I
So,
love that.
so that was
No
really
nonsense.
wonderful to get to meet him in person,
Yeah,
and work with him.
I really liked that series in general. I haven't even seen all of them yet. That's the fun thing. I've still got more to see. But I mean, there were so many stars in that as well. That must have been something you were proud of being part of.
Oh my goodness, yes. There were so many people that wanted to be in that, and a lot of it was shot in Canada. And you realize how many very famous actors are Canadian. Like William Shatner was in an episode. I did an episode with Peter O'Toole.
Yes.
You know, it
Yeah.
was absolutely fascinating. I have on Spotify, I have an album called The Singularity, and there's a piece on there called the Suite for Orchestra, the Ray Bradbury. So I took the theme from the Ray Bradbury theme and I stretched it out to a 3-movement symphonic suite.
So you've used something of your own as an inspiration.
Yeah, something from. Well, you know, it was wonderful. I own the copyright on that. It's one of the rare instances where I own the copyright and the publishing rights for the music I did for the Ray Bradbury Theatre. So that was a lot of fun.
Wow. Oh, that's great. I've actually just the other day I watched the Jeff Goldblum one. The time where no one got off that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, really great series. I want to go on to thanking you for something.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna just say this because I think I've said it on my channel before. I am creeped out by sounds random, but there is a link. I am creeped out by Wizard of Oz. So thank you for giving me my own version in Wizard of Speed and Time. or contributing to that, because I think that is just satire at its best. It's so much fun to sit through from beginning to end. I just want to know your experiences on that, both as an actor, and I'm very jealous of your hair in that as well, but both as an actor and as a composer, because I think it's wonderful.
Well, there was a seminar class I was taking at UCLA, and there was a guy who told me that he was producing a short sequence for a Disney network television special. And he said, "I've been hearing your music that you've been presenting here at the seminar." Now, he wasn't a composer. He was actually there to look for a composer. So he says, "Perhaps we can meet with the filmmaker and you can start working on this movie." I go, I'd be thrilled. I had no idea what I was getting into. So I met 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏, who had done a number of very innovative short films with animation, stop motion animation. And he's a very, very creative, energetic person. And so that Wizard of Speed and Time was supposed to be like a wizard that commands filmmaking equipment, like film cans, film cameras, tripods, and they all dance around. And he's the creative spirit behind film and special effects. Yeah. He's the wizard of speed and time. And then all of a sudden, boom, he'll run around very fast.
Like the Flash.
And so we made a movie, a feature-length movie on how we did that short. Of course, it was there was some dramatic license. How we did that short film for the Disney Network special. We did that as a movie.
Yeah. It was a major effect.
How we did it. And I was in the movie as an actor under protest. And I even I go, I have these, resumes and pictures of actors that look far better than that are actually professional actors that know what they're doing. And I've told them about the role and they're thrilled. One of them is a musician as well. So you'll probably be able to play the piano and do whatever you want to do. So they said, "No, we're not having it." His mother was in the movie.
Yeah,
his
I did
best friend, his brother, his family, his next door neighbors were in the movie. It's the world's most expensive home movie ever made.
I mean, you were under protest, but I bet you're glad you did it.
Yeah. It was. Do I regret doing it? No, I don't regret it at all. It was a lot of fun.
It's fantastic. And also,
and everyone who watches it gets such a great vibe out of it. I would say about 4 or 5 years ago, I released the vinyl of the soundtrack, and we had a little bit of a party at my place, and we had maybe about 20, 30 people, and we were showing the film, and as part of the events of the evening, and 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏 was there, and it's like I had to tell him, listen, Mike, you need to go outside because you're talking so loud. He was having a conversation with someone. You were talking so loud. You're talking over your own movie, and no one can enjoy your movie. So I had to kick him out.
Amazing. Gave him a private screening somewhere else.
Yeah. People want to watch and enjoy your film. They're not going to understand. I didn't know what the movie is about. There's some guy talking over the whole thing afterwards. But anyways,
I just want to make something clearer, John. You did compose that. I don't want to call it a jingle, but that for the short film in '79, you composed that.
Well, that was a tune that Michael whistled to me, and he came up with the lyrics, and I helped him realize that little tune that he had. So, and then throughout the film, I did music throughout the film. Mike had little ideas. He would whistle something. I go, oh, that sounds like a good motif. So it was a collaborative effort. It was creating, but I produced and, orchestrated and performed. And
so you brought it to life.
Yes.
See, I love things like that because I'm a big fan of recognizable original music. Because I think sometimes, I don't know if anybody else really shares this opinion, but I think a lot of when I see movies now, you'll hear pop songs that have just been changed into slow, haunting tunes with like a piano, and I don't hear any original sort of tunes anymore. And I love the one in that because it's so recognizable. It's almost like the He-Man transformations theme or the Gremlins theme or something. I love something to be recognizable, and that tune stuck in my head as soon as I heard it.
Well, what's interesting is that from the feature film, there's an orchestral. We had a budget to do one orchestral piece, and we did it's called The Wizard Run that we composed, and it turned out so well. And it's now owned by Sony Music, and it shows up in commercials, in other TV shows, in movies, and all sorts of things. People call me out of nowhere, says, "Oh, John, I heard the Wizard theme in such and such a reality show or a car commercial or this thing. Are you aware of that?" I go, "Yeah, that's what it's all about."
That's fantastic.
We get licensing fees and royalties from that. So yeah, that one particular piece was just too much. It was too wonderful not to share with the world. So it lives another life,
Yeah, I hope it continues to, because it's really grabbed me, that one. I watched it quite a while ago, but it's one of those I can put on repeatedly. I always think that's a special thing to have. You took on the Killer Klowns project.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about clowns?
Clowns in general?
Yeah.
Well, I could just tell you from my experience from when I was a little kid, that I never liked them. I mean, I remember I was probably like 8 years old. We went to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, and it was actually in a massive, it was in a convention hall. And to me, it wasn't a wonderful experience. It was because you had the smell of animals, and then the smell of like hot dogs and popcorn. There was back in the day, people wore a lot of cologne and women wore a lot of perfume. And so this is how I'm remembering it, right? And all my olfactory nerves are, all my olfactory senses are just overwhelmed. And then you had these clowns that would come up to you, and it's hot, and they're sweating, and you can smell the makeup has a certain smell. Yeah. Absolutely. I just want to say, make it go away. They never came up to me, but close enough where I can smell them. And they had obviously a lot of body odor because they're moving around. They got this makeup that's like caked on their face, and I don't know if they're able to perspire or not. but you smell perspiration. So it was an awful experience.
So do you think that Killer Clowns from Outer Space, combining that, obviously the visuals and the the movie itself and the score, do you think that sort of softened the fear somewhat?
No, it didn't. It didn't. It's not that I'm afraid of them, but the clowns and Killer Clowns from Outer Space are absolutely delightful. I feel that they're my extended family in a certain way.
They're beautiful to look at. I think
Yeah.
the construction of them and
the concept. If you see some of the conceptual art that I'm sure you can find online, Charlie Chiodo, who did many of the drawings, it's just so brilliant. It's just so brilliant. And they were able to, the mask maker was able to bring all that to life, and it had just enough mechanisms in it to seem real.
Yeah.
You know?
Facial. I always remember him. I think I don't know if it was Stephen who said that there's enough mouth movement that you're not just looking at the mouth.
Right. And with the eyes as well, eyes lifting and shifting around. Yeah. It was very I mean, that's an incredible testament to their the Chiodo brothers' conceptual art and engineering of everything.
You have a great connection to good effects in movies. I mean, obviously all the stop motion we talked about, the Wizard, Speed and Time, stop motion in that, the puppetry in this one. I don't know what kind of, I'm imagining there was quite a low budget for Wizard of Speed and Time. I don't know about Killer Clowns. I can't remember if I read up on how much went into that, but do you find that you do your best work when you're challenged with things like a low budget or smaller resources?
Well, it always, working in low budget calls upon being very innovative, because when you try to overdo it with a 15-cent budget, so you figure, well, if I'm going to have less musicians, they have to be really good musicians.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'd rather have 5 or 6 incredible musicians than 40 student musicians. Not to besmirk student musicians, because I just went to a concert last week at the University of Southern California, USC, that their student orchestra was phenomenal. They just played with so much gusto. They were so serious. It was wonderful. I mean, are they like the LA Phil? No. The LA Philharmonic? No. Are they like a professional orchestra? No. But did they do an incredible job? Yes. So you have to use your be careful with your resources and where you put them. And oftentimes, and this is a consideration that some young composers need to know, you have to make the decision, okay, I'm not going to make a lot of money now, but I'm going to do such a good job that this is going to help this play more like on cable and the variety of broadcast venues, where over a period of years, you'll more than make your remuneration will be well rewarded. And then there are times where something never gets off the shelf. So, I mean, I've worked on movies that will never see the light of day, ever. It's basically, you could just forget about them because they're so tied up in legalities that I would imagine after many, many years, when all of the legal entities that have an interest in that particular property have dissipated and it becomes in the public domain, and then it'll be shown. But that's whenever we're all long gone by that time. But so it can be very, very frustrating. You put a lot of work and resources into something, and then it just like, when is this going to be released? Oh, we're still working on it. And I've worked on things that they're listed on IMDb, and some of them have never seen. No, the public has never seen them, other than maybe the trailer.
Wow, so it's literally just part of a list.
Yes.
Wow.
It comes with the profession.
Yeah, I suppose if you know the score from the beginning, then you sort of it's
well
coming.
I still have all the I still have the music. I mean, I could probably release it under a different title, who knows?
When is, I think I asked Lito this when I spoke to him, and I love this. So I'd love to know this from you. When you're composing a score for any kind of movie, when is less more? How do you know what's too much and when to sort of bring it back and only be minimal?
Well, when you asked me that question, it made me think of when I was starting out and I was an apprentice under a composer. His name was David Rose, and he did a TV series called Little House on the Prairie that I worked on. And he was telling me, he gave me a little speech. He said, once I went through the trials and tribulations to say, okay, you can work on some stuff. I'll have you help me do things. He said, listen, not everything has to be in food. Not every food has to be spicy. Not every food has to be sweet. Sometimes, just butter and toast is all you need. There's joy in that. And then there's joy in a lavish meal with, variety of cornucopia of flavors. So he was saying you got to be judicious. If everything's all colorful and big and overproduced, the audience is going to tune it out.
The novelty wears off.
Exactly. Sometimes you don't need a melody. Sometimes you just need a figure, some sort of like a sequential, like a chord progression or something like that with a rhythm, very much like Bernard Herrmann would do in many of his films, where he would just have a rhythm going. And it moves the scene along, and it captures your attention. And then there's sometimes you need a melody, that's a theme that's going to express something. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
You just have to you have to use your sensibilities to figure out what's important. You can't say, oh, in this scene, like I remember going back to Little House on the Prairie. He said, I'm going to give you a scene. There's these kids, they're going to walk into the schoolhouse with bare feet, and someone has donated shoes for the kids. And then a few minutes later, they're going to walk out with shoes on. Think of something that's like they're walking up the stairs. So you're going to write some descending figure, and then you're going to wait. And then when they come down, ascending figure. And then when they come out, there's going to be a descending figure. That's all I'm going to tell you. So I did something very simple with like pizzicato. And he goes, perfect, simple. No one's flipping on the television at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday to watch Little House on the Prairie to hear your brilliant masterpiece. You have to do something that's going to support, and in that exercise, you've created a masterpiece. So you just have to use good sensibilities, and it comes also from listening and watching movies. When I say listening, sometimes you can put a movie on and not watch it and listen to the dialogue and how the music reacts. You don't necessarily have to watch it, because when you're watching it, it's taking away a little bit of your brain power watching it. But if you're listening to it, all of a sudden you're tuned in to how the music is responding to the dialogue. A really good film that did that so well, that I learned so much from, was the first Ghostbusters movie. The score was just so perfectly tailored with the dialogue and the comedy and the timing. It was just so brilliant. So I went in like 2 or 3 times with my little Sony Walkman and recorded at the movie theater, and would just listen over and over again to the score, of how that you get the like the grammar of the music and the timing. Very, very important. Very important.
When it comes to just hearing a score, like, so not one that you've done or anything, say you just go to a movie and the score is there and you can decide whether you like it or not. Do you have a specific, I didn't even have this question in this is one I've just thought of now. Do you have a specific kind of score that you like the most? So like,
no.
So any, really?
No. Oddly enough, one day I came home and my wife is just absolutely drop dead enamored with Korean novellas, Korean soap operas, Korean dramas, right? I won't know what the heck they are, but I'll hear it in another part of the house. I'll say, the scores to these things are incredible. They're fantastic, and they're all over the place. It doesn't matter. No, there's not one particular type of music. I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up listening to Buck Owens and Dolly Parton and Chet Atkins, and what in country music it was called the Bakersfield sound. I found out later that George Harrison loved that type of country music. He was a big fan of them. When he came to Los Angeles, he would hang out with all the country players.
I'm a big country fan.
Yeah,
I'm a big country music fan. We've got a honky tonk night actually next week we're going to. So
it's like punk music is to rock. It's so honest.
Yeah.
Especially back in the day. It was really honest. So I remember when I was a kid, we used to go to, it was free. There was a place near Disneyland called Knott's Berry Farm. And that's where they had music programs, and even at Disneyland, they would have Count Basie, for crying out loud, the jazz legend, performing at the Carnation Theater
for nothing.
They would pay him.
Well, yeah, but you got to,
you would go. There was a time where you would go into the park for free, and you would pay to go on the rides, but nonetheless, we were just blown away to see the actual Count Basie play, and these musicians that were like just at a stellar level play. And the same thing at Knott's Berry Farm to see Buck Owens, Sons of the Pioneers. Let me see, who else can I remember? Well, obviously it was Donnie. Oh, there was also Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
I'm like 50 feet away from him as a kid, seeing him. I go, well, it's one thing hearing it on the radio. It's another thing seeing them perform.
Quite a presence, people like that.
Yeah, because it's just so honest, and they're exposing everything right there. And Dolly Parton was always beautiful. Oh my God.
My partner she's a complete idol. She will do
anything. I got something to tell you. There was one time I was at the ASCAP offices in part of Hollywood called it's part of Hollywood that goes right into, it's like West Hollywood that goes into Beverly Hills, and she had an office there, and she had just come into her office, and she was flirting with me. This is when I was like 26. This is when I was 26. I looked a little different than I do now.
I know. Like I said, I was jealous of that.
She goes, well, who are you? Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to the ASCAP and BMI office, and she said, well, that's really good. You make sure they give you all your money. Wow. Something like that. I forgot what she said. It was something like that. Yeah.
Just a hello would have been enough for me.
Yeah. But it's like she saw me and wanted to talk to me.
Yeah, I can believe that. I will. I've got sort of one sort of question I want to ask you before I sort of wrap this up with sort of a nice ending. I have a late friend who was a musician, and his son was actually a phenomenal pianist, keyboard player, incredible. I went to play, because I played a little acoustic guitar, I still do every once in a while, but I went to play with him once, and I said, like, I wish I could get better, because I want to play in front of people, and it bothers me that I can't. And he was like, you have to learn to play for yourself before you play for a living. Would you get on board that?
Yeah, you when you say play for yourself, where like rain or shine, you play for your own enjoyment.
Yes.
And I would say that's a good perspective. I'd say it's a good perspective. I mean, if you want to be a professional musician, you have to play whether you're sick, whether you're in a good mood, whether you just had a fight with your best friend, where you have to be able to play like you actually love it.
I think it was
the thing about being a professional.
I think it was because I was afraid that I wasn't doing well enough to do it in front of people, and I was like, that's what at the moment all I want to do is play and listen to myself. And he was like, that's right. That's the right way to be. You should want to listen to yourself.
Right.
And then it
exactly.
can transfer.
But you can also be critical of yourself. I remember telling someone, it was a student, and he was a drummer, and he just, you're the heartbeat of the band. You've got to, your time has to be consistent. I said, I tell you what, let's take a few weeks off. Don't come to rehearsal. We have someone play the drums, but this is you're gonna really like this. Listen to these particular songs, which is what we were playing, and play with the record over and over, where it's like you've got the groove down and the timing down, and the extra step is recording yourself playing along to it. You're going to learn so much hearing the recording and seeing, oh, I hear I'm slowing down there, oh, I'm speeding up there, and you'll be able to correct that. He came back totally like hitting hammers and nails. I mean, he was like totally good. Not all people take that kind of criticism well. I mean, I've been criticized. I mean, I've been called on the spot on the recording stage for making a tiny mistake that is literally saying, oh yeah, no, it's a G flat, it's a G natural, not a G flat. Something that quick, just like being a scene made. And that's another thing, is dealing with people with big inflated egos. I won't go into that story, but there was someone famous that like really chewed me out in front of everyone for no reason, and that happens. You got to have a thick skin. The media business is not for the squeamish. I mean, I've worked on things that like I thought were just like my best work, and people go, I don't know what to think of it, especially working in commercials.
Oh, right. Yeah, I can imagine that's different altogether.
Yeah.
I have seen some of you've done a lot of obscure. I've seen Cherokee Creek.
Okay, that's recent. That's a friend of mine in Texas did a movie, his very first movie, and he asked if I could help him out on it, and I said okay.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you work on masterpieces, sometimes you work on fun like someone else's passion project. You know? The one thing I liked about that movie is working with him, the director, was so much fun.
That's what it's about, I would think. I mean, I had fun watching it. I mean, it's a monster movie, and I can get on board anything. I had Dog Soldiers vibes, I thought, but I like that. What I want to ask you, John, is sort of what do you do, just to wrap it up now? What do you do to unwind when you're not? When you don't have a head full of music? What is your sort of passion? Because I'm guessing it's cooking.
Well, yes, I do like to cook, but I love to travel. I like to go places. I like to go to rugged places. There's something you may not know about me. For a time, I've had, like in the mid-90s, claimed a bunch of mining property in the desert that I leased out to a Canadian company. You just don't find mineral property out of nowhere. You have to do a lot of research. You go out in the field. You do a lot of camping. I love the outdoors. I love the outdoors. I tell my wife, and she cringes. I says, I would love it if you, me, and the kids and all the people that we know, all the very competent people we know, would just live off the grid, way up in the mountains where we're not bothered by society. If we could do that every once in a while for a month. Off the coast of California here, there's something called the Channel Islands. Some of them are kind of remote. There's nothing on them except shrubbery.
Sounds like heaven.
Exactly. And they do, the parks, the national parks and the state parks do allow you to rent out or allow you to camp there. You have to make an appointment and make sure that you meet certain protocols, but I would love to do that. One of my other guilty pleasures is going on Google Earth and looking for remote islands in the ocean. Every so often there's to be like a tiny island. You think no one's been there, but someone's pinned it, because there are people traveling all over the place in boats and yachts and in sail ships, and it's like this little island that's not even a sandbar. It's got someone's pinned it with a photograph, because they were going, and some of these are off the shipping lanes too, so you wonder what the heck were they doing there.
I can see that horror films haven't influenced you at all, because you've no worry about going to somewhere remote where no one seems to have been.
Oh, I would love it. I would love to be someplace, you know, there's supposed to be some island not far from Pitcairn Island in the South Pacific Ocean, almost on the way to the Antarctic, that's supposed to be the most remote place a human being can stand on. And the only other closest humans would be in the space station 200 miles above you. But you're actually like 4,000 miles from land in all directions.
That's
I would love to be there for a week.
For a week?
And just watch the stars and just be just in the silence and solitude for a while. I think that would be wonderful. I don't think I can live like what was the Tom Hanks movie where
Castaway.
He was stuck on Castaway? Yeah. I don't think I would go for years in that situation.
Well, John, I've got to say, I've had a really good time chatting to you. I've learned so much. To talk to. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And what, just as we close, you were very kind. You were kind enough to send me some music you've been working on earlier.
I found a lot of music that's under my control that, in a sense, for two purposes: to archive it and to share it with other people. So there's one that just came out called Dark Wave.
Yeah.
There's going to be a soundtrack to a Western, a straight up traditional Western with orchestral music.
Wow.
And there'll be some other pieces of music. But my serious releases will be at the end of May and at around Halloween in October.
Okay.
That's with my band. That is called, my band is called JM, and my band is a variety of artists that help me create music that I've worked on, and I'm also doing a couple of covers from a very famous punk band that I've already finished it and did a premix of it, and they're very excited about it. They like the treatment that I gave it, and I'm working with some very, very fine, talented vocalists, guitarists, drummers, bass players. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to come out like I'm going to release 2 singles in the end of May, excuse me, and then the rest of the album should be around October.
Well, thanks for that. I'll make sure that I push this as well when it does, because that sounds very exciting. All I want to say, John, is thanks very much for answering a lot of quite detailed questions extremely well. And like I said, I've learned a lot in this last hour, and I'm pretty sure anybody that watches this will do the same. So thank you so much for coming down and talking to me today. And
thank you for having me.
I look forward to your future work.
And my best regards to Manchester.
Absolutely. So thank you, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly did. And I will check in with you guys very soon for some more rankings, some more reviews, and some comparisons between remakes and originals. There's a lot of content coming up soon. But from me and John, thank you so much. This has been Primetime Mitch. Thank you for all your interactions on the channel for this interview with John. If you want to see more like this, check out the video links below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button over there to be notified of any upcoming content. It's all for you average movie lovers. Thanks, guys.